Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Friday, December 15th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Cotton Bowl game against Missouri in 14 days. Yes, just 2 weeks. That doesn't seem possible. The game against Michigan in 351 days. When the Buckeyes play that Cotton Bowl game in 2 weeks, they are likely, very likely, going to have Devin Brown as a starter for them at quarterback. First time start for Devin Brown in his career. And so when I went back to look at his stats for his career so far, I thought, hey, these would be a pretty interesting show to do with Tony Gerdeman. Okay, that's not what happened. Tony Gerdeman sent me an idea for a show, and I said, I'm going to steal it and take credit for it. And here we are, Tony. Devin Brown's career stats, will he go over or under them in the Cotton Bowl game? Because I think Devin Brown has been around a while. You've heard a lot of talk about Devin Brown. And then you look at his career stats, and it's like, oh, he really has not played a whole heck of a lot.
Yeah, and he is going to get more action than he's ever gotten. His first start, as he said, excited for a top 10 matchup in the Cotton Bowl. If he might be the most excited guy to be playing in the game, so it's good that your quarterback is that guy. And we're going to get the first really, really sustained look where he's not the change of pace quarterback. He is the pace. And I'm interested to see what kind of pace he sets.
All right, so let's run through his career stats right now, just for folks who maybe don't have them right in front of them, and why would you? 12 completions, 22 attempts, 54% completion percentage, 197 yards, 9 yards per attempt, and 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, long pass of 58 yards, sacked 3 times. And I guess, Tony, the first thing that jumps out to me on that list of stats is, everyone remembers probably the long bomb that he threw to Brandon Inniss in the Purdue game, 58-yard touchdown, Brandon Innis' only catch of his career so far, longest pass of Devin Brown's career. That is 30% of his career yards on that one pass. That was, there were a bunch of these numbers I looked at, I went, that can't be right. That seems way too low, but didn't play last year, didn't throw any passes last year, and then played some in the early going, and then didn't play a whole heck of a lot, and then got hurt and missed a bunch of weeks, and it just, and then when you thought he was coming back, he re-aggravated the ankle injury. I think that was before the Michigan State game. Another game where he would have played a lot. It feels like we've been talking about Devin Brown for so long, and you haven't really seen anything out of him, good, bad, or indifferent for the most part. So, all right, we're going to start with a very easy one, Tony. 12 career completions for Devin Brown, over or under 12 completions for Devin Brown in the Cotton Bowl.
I'm going to go over that one time. I feel pretty good about that just because I think you'd have to go back a long time to find, maybe you'd have to go back a while to find the last time an Ohio State quarterback completed fewer than 12 passes or completed fewer than 13 passes in a game. And I think there's a chance that he's not the only quarterback that plays for Ohio State in this game, which will factor into these numbers as well. But the conditions should be okay. I don't think it'll get too windy there in Jerry World, so I don't think you have to worry about a Northwestern situation. No hurricane force winds or anything like that. You close up the ceiling, you close up the windows, and you should be okay. So I feel like 12 over 12 might be, I think that might be the safest bet in any of these numbers today.
Yeah, I think you're probably right there. He if he starts and if he plays more than a half, I would certainly expect him to complete at least 12 passes. The fewest passes completed by Kyle McCord this season as a starter for Ohio State was 14. That was against Youngstown State, and that was, of course, a game where Devin Brown played a bunch. So Devin Brown was the only reason Kyle McCord only completed 14 passes against Youngstown State was that Devin Brown was playing a bunch of that game. So there's the first one. Yes, I agree with you there. That's a pretty easy over. 22 attempts. So I guess let's just make these 22 and a half, 12 and a half, all that. 22 and a half attempts. This is another one where the only time an Ohio State quarterback did not go over 22 and a half attempts was, again, in that Youngstown State game. Kyle McCord was 14 for 20. He attempted only 23 passes the following week against Western Kentucky. This, to me, feels like another probably relatively easy over.
Yeah, I'm thinking over as well. And I'm just looking back at CJ Stroud, his lowest number of attempts. He had 22 against Rutgers in 2022 and 22 against Minnesota in his season debut in 2021. So it is possible that you only have 22, but if he's only if he's only throwing the ball 22 times in this one, that tells me they're running the ball pretty good. And I don't know that you necessarily need to let's focus on the run in this game. Let's make sure we establish the run. I think you want to see what you've got in Devin Brown, so you let him throw it around. And it may be, it may end up being like a 17 for 49, but you're going to find out if he can throw the ball or not. I'm not expecting 17 for 49, but I am expecting over 22.
Yeah, I think, unless they really are splitting the reps 50-50 with him and Lincoln Keen-Holson, I'm not expecting that. I would assume you're going to get over 22 and a half pass attempts. Kyle McCord had, as I said, only one game where he did not hit that mark. Then in terms of total yardage, passing, Devin Brown 197 yards on the season. There was only one game where Kyle McCord did not hit that number this season, and that was the game at Rutgers, threw for 189 yards in that one. I guess this is the first one to me where you could see him not getting to 197.
Yeah, and if there's no Marvin Harrison, I think maybe that impacts some things as well. So I feel less confident about this, but also only thrown for 197 yards. And maybe if we go and look to see how often, what does that Missouri pass defense look like in terms of how many yards are they giving up routinely against, I'd say moderate pass offenses. You look over what they've done in the past, and they haven't given up. They've given up one 300-yard game this year, so I think that's pretty good overall. But Florida threw for 239 yards on them. So if Florida can throw for 200 yards on you, you'd think Devin Brown could. But to me, this also comes down to choice, and I think they will choose to do so. Tom, I'm wondering, what are the chances? What odds would you give me that Devin Brown would beat all three of these numbers in the first half?
In the first half, oh boy. First half would be
plus 400 something, where are we?
Yeah, that's a lot for the first half. So he'd have to go 13 for 23 for 198 yards in the first half. Yeah, like a plus 400 is probably not a bad guess. I'm just looking at the game by game stats for Missouri. The only three teams failed to hit 197 yards passing against Missouri this year. It was South Dakota, Kentucky, and Arkansas. But as you said, only Memphis went over 300 yards against Missouri. So yeah, boy, 197 yards in the first half. That's pretty close to what most teams did. I might even say plus 500 there, because you got to remember, you're basically functionally doubling those numbers to get to your game total. And that seems very, very, very high.
But we also know Ryan Day likes to be aggressive out of the gate. This is not CJ Stroud, but if this was CJ Stroud, you'd be like, well, not quite even money, but it wouldn't shock me if they were. I think that the toughest part there is, are you going to throw the ball 23 times? Because if you've got 200 yards passing, you probably did it in like 14 attempts or 16 attempts, something like that.
Yeah, I think that would be pretty surprising to get to that number and a half. Because, CJ Stroud, what did he have in the Rose Bowl? 500 something yards or 400 and something yards in the Rose Bowl and 6 touchdowns. That was, similarly perfect conditions, but also a Utah team playing a running back at defensive back. And, so, I think the longer we talk about this, the less I think he's going to do it in a half. I do think he's going to probably hit all three of those numbers for the game. If you're going to parlay all three of those going over, I think that's probably pretty close to even money that he's going to go over all three of those. Next up, Tony, is touchdowns. 2 touchdowns passing on the year for Devin Brown. 2.5. This is the first one that I'm kind of going, all right, now this is, I think, a very, very interesting number. 3 touchdowns or more, or 2 touchdowns or fewer.
I think this is, if you said it at 2.5, I'm going under. You said it at 1.5, I'm going over. And since we're throwing a half on all of these, I would say under because you obviously don't have the free space of Marvin Harrison. Perhaps, maybe they will. And if they do, then I'm gonna, I'll take the over on everything. But it's difficult to expect a guy to throw for 3 touchdowns in a game uh, that is just starting his first career game. Kyle McCord this year, how many 3 touchdown games did he have? I'll look real quick. He had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I don't know how many of those came against quality top 10 opponents. None of them, in fact. So it's much more difficult to do it against a fighting foe than it is just a random Joe. So I will say under, but also I think they're going to want to throw it around and just see what happens.
I think one thing that might lead me to pick the under there is, where did we see Devin Brown when Devin Brown was playing after the first couple games of the season? He was coming in the goal line to run the football. So, that either is, number one, I think that makes it more likely that they're going to try to run the ball more in the goal line. But of course, the flip side of that is, what do you do during the course of the season? You show something and then you build off of it. And I don't think, he threw one pass down at the goal line at one point against Purdue and it was incomplete, but maybe you've got a throw off of the run that you've been setting up. So, he's going to play in the goal line. We are pretty sure of that. And then the question is, are they going to run like they have, or are they going to throw like they've seemingly been setting up? So I think, he might vulture one of his own passing touchdowns with a rushing touchdown. So that's one more thing that I think would lead me to the under there, but we'll see. Interceptions through 1 pick all season. So over under 1.5 interceptions, Tony.
You don't ever want to be that guy that picks, I think you're going to throw 2 interceptions. So since I don't have to say, I think he's going to throw 1, I can just say, I think he'll go under. But is anybody going to be shocked by a guy throwing 2 interceptions the first time he's out there really on a big stage? And say what you want about the Cotton Bowl. It's a big stage for him. It's a big stage for the players. First real action, month off of action from he didn't play since Penn State in October. So he's been gone for, about 7 weeks at that point. So, or 9 weeks from that point. So, 2 interceptions would not shock anybody, but I will take the under, Tom, because I am not a hater.
Yeah, I think the odds that he goes over 1.5 interceptions. Yeah, I'm gonna take the under too. Just to be clear, the odds that he goes over 1.5 interceptions is probably about the same as the odds he goes over 2.5 touchdowns. Where, you wouldn't be surprised at all to see either side of either of those. Under is probably the safer bet for both of them until you see it, but that's So I think those are both. You could make an argument either way, but I'm gonna lean with you under on both of them. Sacks, Tony. 3 sacks taken by Devin Brown this season. I'm going to tell you, Missouri's defense only had more than 3 sacks once. That was against Middle Tennessee State. 3 sacks against Georgia and Tennessee, and 2 in all of the other games or fewer. Over under 3.5 sacks.
I'm going to go under, because although, again, it wouldn't be a shock for somebody to take a little bit longer to process when this is new for them. And, the defense is going to come up with some stuff. So maybe there's some paralysis by analysis type of stuff, but also you're going to want to dial up some quick stuff so that doesn't happen. Maybe some QB draws to where maybe the defense has to be a little bit cautious on that pass rush so that they don't lose contain and give some stuff up. So I'll say under 3.5 sacks. Tom, you?
Yeah, I'm going under as well on that one, and I was all excited to make the point that I bet they kind of try to keep things relatively simple for him in his first game, and you beat me to it. But yeah, a lot of, you might have 2 reads and take off kind of plays lined up for him. You use use your legs where, Ohio State fans are used to being on the other side of this right now, where the rush can't get too aggressive because of the edges. If the edges get behind the quarterback, then that opens up some real rushing lanes. That's usually something Ohio State fans have been worrying about when they were on defense, but now Ohio State may have a quarterback that can make opponents worry about that a little bit more. So Yeah, I will go under on that as well. So this is going to be, I think we're going to learn a lot about Devin Brown in this Cotton Bowl game. He should have most of his weapons and presumably most of his offensive line and all that against a pretty decent but not all world defense where there's a reasonable chance for some success, not a guarantee of success, but also not a guarantee of failure. So going to be probably a pretty good barometer of what Devin Brown could look like for the Buckeyes moving forward. We will be there. 2 weeks till the game, so we're like a week and a half away from getting on an airplane and going down to Dallas. Tony and Kevin and I will be down there covering the game. Got early signing day coming up in just 5 days now, next Wednesday the 20th. A lot of recruiting news coming out. Transfer portal, Buckeyes looking to add a couple folks. Who knows if anyone else is going to go in the portal at this point. Lots of stuff to do, lots of stuff to talk about, lots of stuff to read about, lots of stuff to chat about, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. And of course, on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Make sure you are subscribed to both of those places. Make sure you hit that bell on YouTube to get notified when we post a new show. Hit that thumbs up. That will help other folks find the show. I don't understand how, but they tell me that's what it works. So, all right, hit the thumbs up. And that was a nice thing you can do for us that will help other folks find these shows. And if you're listening on your podcast platform of choice, leave us a 5-star rating and review. That will also help folks find these shows. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.